I'm joined by Andrew Hilliar from our International Affairs Desk. Hello to you, Andrew. We have the first two cities. It looks like a third could fall imminently. How significant is this latest development?
These latest developments are indeed very, very significant. Let's just focus on the fall of Hama, confirmed yesterday. We can show you some pictures of the immediate aftermath of the fighting for control of that city. And what you can see in these pictures, it's just after the arrival of the first militants from the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham group. This is the radical Islamist group that's leading the offensive. You can see there evidence of what looks to have been a fierce firefights, a burnt-out tank just earlier as well, which shows that there may have been some resistance to this offensive in the city. Of course, we've heard a lot about how government forces have simply melted away and withdrawn. Here they appear to have tried to have held the lines for a little bit. However, as rebel groups approached the city centre, they withdrew, that presumably to avoid sustaining heavy losses in urban combat. We know that the rebels are in full control of the military airport of Hama. That's significant because it's one of Syria's biggest military airports. It had been used to launch strikes against the rebel forces. We know they've also captured a prison and released inmates from that prison. So very significant. Let's just bring up a map now so we can take a look at the bigger picture. And what you're going to see on this map, Will, is just how significant this is, because by capturing Hama, of course, that opens the road to Homs. Even, this map itself may already be out of date because the situation is changing so rapidly. The latest reports we have are that rebel forces may be indeed only 5 kilometres from the city of Homs. We know that government forces have been bombing the highway that goes from Hama to Homs, reportedly also taking out a bridge to slow the rebel advance. Now, if rebels take Homs, that would put the capital, Damascus, under serious threat. Another significant factor at play here is that the capture of Homs would potentially cut off the regime in Damascus from the Syrian coast, which is where you have a significant base of support for the regime. And one more regional implication to point out as well. The capture of Hama also jeopardizes Iranian supply routes, arming Hezbollah fighters in Lebanon. So regional implications already being felt.
Right, so very strategic because of that last point, but also, as you mentioned, the road to Homs and the airport. But Hama also a very symbolic prize for the rebels, isn't it?
It is a symbolic prize because it is. Hama has always been a focal point of Sunni resistance to the Assad regime. In many ways, it's the birthplace of armed Islamist resistance against Bashar al-Assad's farmer, Hafez al-Assad, as well. Revolts in the past have always been brutally crushed. In 1982, of course, notoriously, there was an uprising led by the Muslim Brotherhood, which was crushed by the Syrian regime. Up to 30,000 people may have been killed in that massacre that lasted roughly 1 month. In 2011, the city rose up against Hafez al-Assad's son, Bashar al-Assad, and it never actually fell completely into rebel hands. That's another reason why this is so significant. This is the first time it has completely fallen into the hands of the rebels.
And Hayat Tahrir al-Sham promising minority groups will not be targeted. But what are minorities making of those assurances?
Well, yeah, first thing to point out is that the control of Hama is important and interesting in that it could facilitate the control of two other towns, Muhrada and Salamiya, and that's where you have sizable minority populations. Syria, of course, a mosaic, a patchwork of different ethnic and religious groups, including Christians, Armenians, Kurds, amongst other groups. The leader of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, since they launched this lightning offensive 9 days ago, often appealing to minorities, to Christian groups, saying that they will be protected, they won't be harmed. We have heard reports and seen images of minorities fleeing Aleppo, Hama and Homs, terrorized by the advance of these rebel forces because, of course, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham was an affiliate of al-Qaeda up until 2016. Then it split. Until then, it was known as Jabhat al-Nusra. Now, what they've done since then is kind of tried to soften their image in the last few years, if you will. They've swapped the Islamist flags for the black, green, white flags of the Syrian opposition. They've modified their discourse a bit too, so you have elements of nationalism there now. And of course, what remains to be seen is whether or not this is all done for political calculation or whether there really are some long-term changes at work here. And perhaps one of the real tests will be how rebels treat the minority Alawites in areas they capture. Of course, Alawite people, a sect of Shia Islam from which the Assad family itself hails.
Andrew, thank you very much. Andrew Hilliar from our International Affairs Desk.